While inspecting his troops in the field, General Patton noticed a soldier standing a bit too relaxed for his liking. Marching over, Patton barked, "Soldier, why aren't you standing at attention?" The soldier quickly straightened up but nervously replied, "Sir, I'm sorry, sir. It's just that I was, practicing to look casual for when the war is over, sir." Patton paused for a moment, then leaned in and said, "Well, soldier, if you don't start practicing to win this war, there won't be any casual to look forward to." The soldier quickly replied, "Yes, sir. But if I start practicing to win as hard as you, sir, they might promote me to general too fast, and then who would be left to follow orders?" Patton raised an eyebrow, surprised by the soldier's cheekiness, then let out a hearty laugh. "Well, soldier, if you can handle the pressure, maybe we could use a few more generals with a sense of humor around here." During an inspection, General Patton came across a group of soldiers who appeared to be meticulously aligning stones in a large open field. Intrigued, he approached the soldiers and asked, "What's the purpose of this stone formation, gentlemen?" One of the privates, trying not to show his nerves, replied, "Sir, we're arranging these stones to spell out 'welcome' in giant letters. It's so when enemy planes fly over, they'll think they've already captured this area and won't bother bombing it." Patton looked at the stones, then smirked. "Creative. But don't you think the enemy might just send a thank you note instead?" One of the soldiers, looking confused, replied, "Sir, if they do, should we write back or just wave?" Patton shook his head, chuckling. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that, soldier. And next time, use sand. That way, if they don't like the welcome, you can quickly write, 'Sorry.'" General Patton once issued an order for his soldiers to march through a swamp. As they prepared for the challenging task, one soldier asked, "Sir, should we bring towels?" Patton, with a slight smile, replied, "Bring one if you'd like, but I hope you dry off faster than that." As the soldiers chuckled at Patton's response, another soldier, not wanting to be outdone, raised his hand and said, "Sir, if we're bringing towels, I might as well pack my rubber ducky too." Without missing a beat, General Patton smirked and replied, "Just make sure it knows how to march, soldier." During an inspection, General Patton visited an infantry camp. Noticing a jeep with mud-covered tires but no tracks on the ground, he asked the nervous young soldier, "Private, this jeep was just used, wasn't it?" The young soldier, sweating profusely, quickly replied, "Yes, sir. We just drove it through a muddy road." Patton glanced at the mud on the tires and then back at the clean ground, asking with suspicion, "Then why are there no tire tracks on the ground?" The young soldier stared down for a moment, and then a flash of inspiration struck him. He quickly responded, "Sir, our jeep goes so fast that the mud doesn't have time to hit the ground." Patton, usually very stern, tried to hold back a smile but couldn't help but laugh, saying, "Good one. But next time, leave some tracks so I can see how this jeep flies." One day, General Patton was leading a strategy meeting with several high-ranking officers. The room was filled with maps, charts, and serious faces, all focused on the complex details of the upcoming operation. As the meeting dragged on, one of the officers couldn't help but yawn. Trying to cover it up, he quickly said, "Sorry, sir, just trying to process all this information." Without missing a beat, General Patton looked up from the maps and said, "Don't worry, Colonel. If we're boring the enemy as much as we're boring you, this operation will be a guaranteed success." The room erupted in laughter. Patton smirked and added, "But I'll make sure you're wide awake for the next mission, right at the front lines." One sunny afternoon, General Patton decided to conduct a surprise inspection at a military base in Europe. His sharp eyes scanned a young soldier from head to toe. "Private," Patton said gruffly, "is that a smudge I see on your boot?" The private, trying to stay composed, replied, "Sir, it might be, sir. But I assure you it wasn't there when I left my bunk this morning." Patton raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Are you telling me the dirt just decided to jump on your boot while you were marching here?" The private immediately responded loudly, "Sir, with all due respect, I think the dirt heard you were coming and wanted to see the legendary General Patton for itself." Patton stared at the private for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, a smile appeared on his usually stern face. He chuckled and said, "That's clever, Private, but next time, tell the dirt I'm not giving autographs." During World War II, General Patton, famed for his leadership and unique personality, always wore his helmet. One day, during a rare break in the action, he noticed a young soldier staring at it with curiosity. Approaching the soldier, Patton asked, "Is there something wrong with my helmet, soldier?" The young soldier snapped to attention and replied, "No, sir, it's just that your helmet seems to have more dents than anyone else's." Patton chuckled and said, "That's because it has to protect the most important part of the army." Barely suppressing a grin, the soldier quipped, "Well, sir, maybe it's trying to tell you something. If it ever starts talking, let me know. I'd love to hear its stories." Patton burst into laughter and replied, "If it starts talking, soldier, I'll make sure it requests a transfer to a quieter job." In a dusty military camp, General Patton stood tall, surveying the new recruits. Among them was a fresh-faced recruit with a glint of ambition in his eyes. As Patton approached, the young soldier snapped to attention, eager to make an impression. Patton, with his usual stern demeanor, asked, "So, soldier, what do you hope to achieve in the army?" Without missing a beat, the recruit confidently replied, "Sir, I plan to be a general within 2 years." Patton raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Are you insane?" The recruit smiled and quipped, "Is that a requirement, sir?" Patton chuckled, nodded. "Good, at least you've managed to confuse a general." During a military exercise, General Patton noticed a tank stuck deep in the mud. Never one to shy away from a challenge, Patton climbed into the tank himself and ordered the driver, "Keep moving forward, we're not retreating." The driver, sweating nervously, tried everything he could, but the tank wouldn't budge. The treads spun, flinging mud everywhere, yet the tank remained stubbornly stuck. One of the soldiers outside, trying to lighten the mood, called out, "Sir, maybe the tank just needs a little pep talk." Without missing a beat, Patton smirked and shouted back, "I'd give it one, but I don't think it speaks English." After watching the futile efforts for a few moments, Patton, with his usual flair, leaned back and chuckled. "Well, this tank is just like me. It refuses to back down even an inch." During a large military exercise, General Patton was observing his troops from a hilltop. A young private, whose task was to run up the hill to report the situation, arrived in front of him, sweating profusely and gasping for breath. Patton, with his sharp eyes, stared at the young soldier and asked, "Private, why are you breathing as if you've just run a marathon?" The private tried to catch his breath and replied, "Sir, I'm just following your orders to run as fast as I can to get here." Patton nodded approvingly but couldn't resist making a joke. "Good job, Private. But remember, in battle, if you're running that fast, make sure you're chasing a tank, not the other way around." Hearing Patton's comment, the private quickly replied, "Sir, if I see a tank, I'll run faster than the wind. But hopefully the tank will have to stop to catch its breath too." One day, General Patton was touring a field hospital, checking in on his wounded men. As he approached one young soldier who was heavily bandaged and lying in a bed, Patton asked, "Soldier, what happened to you?" The young man, clearly trying to keep his spirits up, grinned and said, "Sir, I took a grenade blast protecting my unit's position. But don't worry, I'll be back in the fight soon." Patton nodded, impressed. "That's the spirit. And what about your buddy over there?" He pointed to another bed where a soldier was covered in even more bandages. The first soldier chuckled. "Oh, him? He's the one who handed me the grenade. He forgot to pull the pin first." Patton, suppressing a laugh, leaned in and whispered, "Well, next time, make sure you give him a lesson on how to properly gift wrap a present."